There is a silent trap hidden in the gilded corridors of modern society. It masquerades as freedom, success, fulfillment. But at its core, it is a carefully sold illusion. The idea that happiness is the ultimate destination, the ultimate goal of human existence. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, saw this as a dangerous error, and perhaps one of the greatest mistakes of the contemporary era. He said, "Happiness cannot be pursued. It must happen, and it only happens as a side effect of our dedication to a cause greater than ourselves." This sentence at first glance sounds like a paradox, but when we stop, breathe, and really observe what is around us, it begins to make disconcerting sense. Just look. From an early age, we are taught to be happy. Schools sell this. Future. Advertising hammers it home every day. The internet reveals perfect lives, plasticized smiles, and framed achievements. Everything revolves around the promise of a constant emotional state, as if happiness were a measurable goal, a place where you arrive and never leave. But the more we chase after it, the more it escapes. And that's where Frankl comes into play with a key that dismantles all this logic. He observed, in the most inhumane moments in history, in the concentration camps, that those who desperately sought only comfort, immediate relief, or a small, fleeting happiness, almost always broke, because the pain, the cold, and the lack of meaning were too great to be combated by distractions alone. On the other hand, there were those who endured the unbearable, those who found a purpose greater than themselves, who lived not for happiness, but for something, a child, a book yet to be written, a reunion, an ideal. They resisted, and even without smiling, even without comfort, they had an inner strength that kept them standing. Because it was not happiness that sustained the purpose, it was the purpose that silently generated a more solid, more discreet happiness, almost invisible to outside eyes. Frankl warns us, when we make happiness a goal, it escapes. It goes up in smoke, because it is not a place, it is a consequence. It's like the shadow that follows you when you walk towards the light, and the light is the meaning. So maybe the right question isn't how to be happy, but rather, what makes my life worth living, even on the days when happiness doesn't appear? If this question bothers you, crosses you, or awakens you, you are on the right track. Imagine a man surrounded by all modern conveniences. He has comfort, he has food, he has security, he has everything, but still something eats away at him inside. In the silence of the dark room, when the screens go dark and the noise of the world falls silent, he feels an emptiness he can't name, an invisible absence, as if something essential were missing, even when everything seems to be in place. Viktor Frankl called this the existential void. And it's not a figure of speech, it's a real diagnosis, a silent but devastating state that arises not from a lack of pleasures or possessions, but from an absence of meaning. Because human beings, contrary to what many schools of psychology preached in the 20th century, do not live only on pleasure or power. They live, essentially, on what gives meaning to their existence. That's what moves you, that's what sustains you, that's what keeps you sane in the midst of chaos. Frankl observed this not only in concentration camps, but also in the corridors of psychiatric hospitals and in the quiet rooms of big cities. People who had everything except a why. And without that why, all that's left is anxiety, apathy, or despair. He said, man is more concerned with finding meaning in his life than with satisfying his impulses. And if you stop to think about it, this is everywhere. It's in the young person who gives up a promising career because it doesn't make sense. It's in the mother who spends sleepless nights because her son gives meaning to her sacrifice. It's in the worker who repeats the same routine for 20 years, not for pleasure, but because it feeds something bigger inside him. The search for meaning is more than an instinct, it is a hunger, and when it is not satisfied, the human being collapses. That is why the modern world, even though it is so developed, is also one of the most lost. Because we have exchanged purpose for performance, and we have exchanged vocation for vanity. Frankl reminds us that meaning is as vital as air, water, and bread. But unlike them, it is not outside of us. It is hidden in the choices we make every day, in the small decisions, in the discreet gestures, in the silent commitments to that which surpasses us. The real question was never, what do I expect from life? But rather, what does life expect from me? And perhaps it is there, exactly there, that the journey begins to fill what the modern world has forgotten, the center of ourselves. There are pains that cannot be explained, that cannot be put into words, nor can they be resolved with ready-made advice. And when life really gets tough, the veneer of cheap motivation starts to crack. No catchphrase about thinking positive can withstand the weight of grief. No self-help mantra can withstand the sound of a terminal diagnosis. No coach can hold the hand of someone who has just lost everything. It is in this arid terrain where hope crumbles that Viktor Frankl found the most powerful raw material of human existence: meaning. He experienced it firsthand, in his flesh, in his bones, in the biting cold of the concentration camps, among men reduced to numbers, among screams, hunger, and death. He realized something that changed everything. Suffering, however brutal, can be endured if it has meaning. This is not comfort philosophy. This is survival in its rawest form. Frankl tells how some prisoners, even in inhumane conditions, managed to keep a flame burning within themselves. It wasn't optimism, it was purpose. A book they still wanted to write, a son they still wanted to see again, a cause, a faith, a promise made in the silence of their soul. These were the ones who endured, not because they suffered less, but because they suffered for something. The difference is brutal. Those who suffer without meaning collapse, sink, implode inside. But those who find a reason, even if the world collapses around them, remain standing, wounded, yes, but not defeated. Frankl wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." And changing yourself in this context is not about smiling in the face of pain. It is about looking suffering in the eye and asking what it is trying to teach you. It's not about romanticizing pain, but about transforming it into a path, a tool, a strength. Suffering is inevitable, but despair is optional. And what separates the two is meaning. Ultimately, the question is not, how do I escape pain, but rather, for whom or why am I willing to endure it? He who has a reason goes through hell with dignity. We live in the age of freedom. We can choose what to wear, what to eat, what to listen to, who to sleep with, what to work with. With every click, a universe opens up. With every swipe of a finger, 1,000 possibilities appear. But behind this shiny freedom, there is a silent crisis, an emptiness that grows in the silence of the early mornings, in the boredom of the weekends, in the anguish disguised as independence. And this emptiness has a name: nihilism. Viktor Frankl saw this before it became fashionable. He warned, when a human being loses the meaning of life, he does not become free. He becomes vulnerable. Vulnerable to consumption, to distraction, to noise, to superficiality. Because nihilism is not born of failure, it is born of absence. From the feeling that no matter what you do, nothing really has any value. That life is nothing more than a cycle of empty pursuits, where everything is permitted, but nothing is essential. The consequence of this, an entire generation immersed in addictions disguised as lifestyle, in liquid relationships, in soulless routines, in directionless searches. Frankl said that nihilism is not the death of the body, it is the death of the spirit. It is when a person is still alive, but inside, he is gone. And that is what frightened him most. Not human suffering, but the meaninglessness that accompanies it. Because suffering with meaning can elevate, but suffering without purpose destroys. In Frankl's view, modern society has created a dangerous illusion that eliminating suffering is the ultimate goal, and so we numb pain with empty pleasures. But we forget that by numbing pain, we also numb life. And in this torpor, in this numbness, the meaning is lost, because the meaning does not shout, it whispers, and only those who are willing to face the silence hear it. Modern nihilism doesn't dress up as despair, it dresses up as indifference. It says nothing matters, but deep down, it's a stifled cry for direction. Frankl didn't offer easy answers, he offered a path to find meaning again, even if it takes effort. Even if it hurts, because meaning is the antidote. It's the only thing that can break the cycle of apathy. And perhaps, in this world where everything is allowed, the most revolutionary thing to do is ask, what is still worth it? We live in search of moments, small peaks of pleasure, sparks of enthusiasm, moments that accumulate like likes on a social network. Each like, each compliment, each achievement is like a dose of dopamine thrown straight into the bloodstream of the soul. But what happens when all this passes? Because it passes. The new car loses its smell. The relationship becomes routine. Today's success turns into tomorrow's pressure, and that intense happiness evaporates. This is where the question that Viktor Frankl posed as a challenge to modernity comes in. Are you seeking peaks or purpose? Frankl was not against happiness, but he said, in no uncertain terms, human beings are not in search of a state of constant well-being. They are in search of meaning, and the difference between the two is brutal. Momentary happiness is like sugar, sweet, addictive, but unstable. It depends on external circumstances, on what you have, what is happening around you, your mood of the day. The meaning is more like a root. It deepens, it sustains, it does not disappear when the scenery changes. On the contrary, the darker the environment, the more the meaning reveals itself. You can be exhausted, frustrated, distressed, and still feel that your life has direction, that there is something there that pulls you forward, that forces you to get out of bed when everything says you should stay. Frankl saw this in the concentration camp survivors, people who had no external reason to smile, no reward in sight, but they kept fighting anyway, because they were anchored in something greater. And here's the point, meaning doesn't free you from pain, it makes you greater than it. While happiness is interrupted by suffering, meaning is built through it. In a society of the now, of everything for yesterday, of instant pleasure, talking about purpose sounds almost old-fashioned, but perhaps that is exactly what is missing, something that does not depend on likes, applause, or constant encouragement, something that remains when everything else falls away. And perhaps that's why today's most pressing question isn't what makes you happy, but rather, what would you do even if it didn't bring you immediate happiness? The answer to that question is where your meaning lives. There is no manual for life, but sometimes there are compasses. In the midst of darkness, Viktor Frankl drew three paths, three concrete, real human ways to find meaning even when everything seems confusing, empty, and crumbling. He knew that philosophizing was not enough. Human beings need direction. They need grounding. And that is why he traced these routes, through creation, through love, and through suffering. The first of these is the path of creation, what we do, the work we deliver, the art we leave in the world. It could be a company built from scratch, a song composed in silence, a meal prepared with care. When we create, we transcend, we leave marks, and meaning springs from the simple fact of knowing that the world is different because you were here, But Frankl knew that not everyone has the chance to create. Sometimes life prevents it, locks it up, silences it, and that's where the second path comes in. Love. Not the romantic love of soap operas, but love as recognition of the other, as surrender, as silent testimony that someone matters more than you do. Frankl said, "A human being is fulfilled to the extent that he forgets himself, by giving himself over to a cause or a person. To love, in this context, is to step outside your own center. It is to find meaning not in what you do, but in who you choose to carry with you. Sometimes all that sustains you is a look, a promise, a bond that keeps you from falling. But what when there is neither creation nor love? When all is darkness?" This is where the third and most profound path comes in. Suffering. Yes, the suffering. Frankl knew this better than anyone. When everything was taken from him, his job, his family, his dignity, all that was left was pain. And yet, he found meaning. Because human beings, he said, are capable of giving meaning even to the inevitable. We do not always choose what we suffer, but we can choose how we suffer, and this choice is pure freedom, transforming pain into testimony, loss into learning, trauma into legacy. This is the most arid, most difficult, but also the highest form of meaning. Creation, love, suffering, 3 paths, 3 invitations. And you? Which one are you crossing now? Maybe you're in the middle of chaos, and you think there's no way out. But if Frankl taught us anything, it's this. No matter how dark it is outside, there is still a point of light inside you, and it is called meaning. Life can take everything from you. It can take away your home, your money, your health, your family. It can bring you to your knees. It can imprison you. It can humiliate you. It can turn the ground into mud and the future into mist. But still, there is one thing no one can touch. Viktor Frankl called this the last of human freedoms. The freedom to choose the attitude with which you face what happens to you. It may seem like little, it may seem abstract, but it is the basis of everything. Because if your life is just an automatic reaction to what happens, then you are a slave to fate, to circumstances, to others. But if, even in the face of the worst, you can say, "This will not define me, I choose how I respond," then you become free in the only place that truly matters, inside. Frankl didn't write this sitting in a comfortable chair, surrounded by theories. He wrote it after seeing people stripped of everything, and yet, some of them still managed to maintain their dignity. They still managed to forgive, to help, to care. Because in the end, it's not what they do to you, it's what you do with what they've done. Choosing meaning is the most subversive and liberating act that someone can do, because it is saying to the world, you can control everything except my answer. And in that answer lives your identity, lives your strength, lives your name. Frankl said that human beings are not products of their environment. They are the authors of their own story. And when they choose to live with purpose, even when everything is against them, they have already won. So perhaps the question that remains after all this is, are you living as a victim of circumstances, or as someone who has chosen to respond meaningfully? The answer is not simple, but maybe it will change everything.